How does this keep happening? It's almost comical now. People, please keep an eye on Games Workshop because I am very worried about them. Why? Well, the new edition of Warhammer 40k, the vaunted 10th edition, has just leaked in its entirety. That's right, we now have the entire core rules of Warhammer 40k 10th edition, weeks in advance of their expected release date, all in a high quality PDF scan to be digitally flicked through by our grubby little fingers. That's better service than Games Workshop provide. Now you too get to feel like an influencer within Games Workshop's inner circle. Except, you know, you won't be getting free miniatures. Those you have to buy. Luckily though, like North Korea, I am a rogue state. I am a wargaming influencer with no masters. I am off the map, editorially independent. I have signed no NDA with Games Workshop, and so I can talk today about the massive secret of 10th edition. The seismic reveal from the Warhammer 40k 10th edition rules that no one is talking about. The big secret that is hidden in plain sight. I have personally read the 10th edition rules, and I come to you now to warn that they look incredibly underwhelming? Mid, as the children say these days. And the reason for this is pretty simple. 10th edition Warhammer 40k is basically 9th edition Warhammer 40k. What was old is new, and what is new is old. Seriously, I've played a ton of Warhammer 40k 9th edition. In fact, I recently reviewed it as a bonus video for my Patreon. That's right, I do bonus videos for patrons every month. Link in the description below if you want to check that out. And reading over the 10th edition rules has basically told me that there have been very few substantial changes to the core system of 40k. Something which sort of goes against the prevailing narrative of the Warhammer 40k community. Basically since the new edition was first announced. But now that we can see it in its entirety and we can get an idea of what a 10th edition game will look like in action, hell, we can play games of 10th edition right now, so long as we're comfortable with only using a couple of battle line forces and a single named character. Hey, basically playing Necrons in 2003. But if the game is still broadly the same and the rules have barely changed, why are people calling 10th edition so revolutionary? Line of sight has been tweaked so that now Titans and aircraft can draw line of sight through ruins with windows, huh? This has been talked about in the community as if it is a totally radical change. Let me be clear right now though, this is not a radical change. This is a very small change. I don't know, maybe you're just an incrementalist, but this feels very, very, very insignificant. It will barely affect anybody. I mean, specifically, it doesn't affect me or anyone I game with, so it can hardly be called transformative. This is the tallest Smurf in Smurf Village. It's not a big deal. Likewise, I keep seeing competitive players obsessing over the fact that flying units no longer measure their movement diagonally over terrain. Ooh, very spicy. Again though, not very impactful, and it's being talked about like the head of NASA just revealed that they have an alien in the trunk of their car. These are extremely noodly little elements that most casual players will miss on a first read, mostly because they are eminently missable. There are also some basic terrain changes, but again, very insignificant as well. For example, dense cover has been renamed woods. Why? I don't know. I don't know, honestly. Games Workshop are going green. What hasn't changed though is really big. Line of sight is still the same. Movement is still the same. Shooting is basically the same, except the heavy trait on some weapons has gone from reducing ballistic skill by 1 when you move to instead increasing ballistic skill by 1 if you stand still. But all the weapons with the heavy trait have had their basic ballistic skill reduced by 1, so the end result is exactly the same. Turn structure is the same. The game is still defined by the antiquated you go, I go system, where players laboriously activate all of their models one after the other and try to knock their opponent out in the first turn. The truth of 10th edition is that if you don't already really enjoy the core experience of Warhammer 40k, you probably won't enjoy this new edition either. This new edition is unlikely to present much more excitement for you. And I'm worried that a lot of people are going going to be disappointed in the new edition. Now, you might say that it's pretty foolish to have expected the game to really have changed that radically. I mean, I'm sure I'm gonna get comments saying, of course it's Warhammer 40k, what did you expect? Warhammer bass fishing? And I'm not saying that the game remaining true to itself is bad either. I get the Games Workshop don't want to alienate their core demographic, and there's a segment of players who are really satisfied with the game as it is right now. I hope that they do enjoy the changes that are in here. But I talk with lots of people who fundamentally do not enjoy the core DNA of Warhammer 40k. They don't enjoy the focus on list building, the alpha strikes and turn structure, who are right now very excited for 10th edition Warhammer, who have sipped from the cup of hype, and who I am worried are expecting fundamental changes to the system. And I'm trying to get ahead of the hype machine here and say that 10th edition is still Warhammer 40k. And I also get the disappointment in this. In the modern wargame market, the core rules of Warhammer 40k have increasingly felt pretty antiquated. And I'm not just talking about Games Workshop when compared with their competitors either, but also Games Workshop when compared to themselves. They have faster paced and alternating activation system games like Kill Team and Warcry, for example, and those games have really gone down a treat as a result. So please, just don't buy 10th edition Warhammer expecting it to be fundamentally different from 9th. It's ultimately going to be the same system. Now, that's not to say that 10th hasn't improved on 9th edition, of course. Army construction rules are better. The command point system is better. Now players are giving a single command point a turn rather than all of them at once on the first turn, like a child trusted with a cookie jar. You can't trust me with the cookie jar. I'm gonna spend it all. I'm gonna eat all the cookies. I'm gonna spend all my command points. And the prevalence of stratagems have been reduced in the game as well. Thank you, Jesus. Though I will be reviewing the game when it's finally out to the public, and I'll be assessing whether or not Games Workshop have really fixed the stratagem system, because I'm not totally convinced. I'm gonna need to play some games first. But even the biggest change to the core rules, the one that absolutely everybody is losing their mind about, the one that Games Workshop is constantly banging the drum about, doesn't feel like it will actually be particularly impactful in practice. I'm talking about the new Battle Shock system. So in 10th edition, when a squad fails a leadership check, rather than losing individual models like they have been stolen away by ghosts a la 9th edition's morale rules, the unit instead suffers a status effect called Battle Shock. Now, when I first heard about Battle Shock, I was really excited. I was originally hoping for something akin to Bolt Action's pinning system here, arguably one of the most interesting additions to miniature wargaming in the last 30 years. When you play Bolt Action, you will find that this is a hugely impactful and engaging system, and it absolutely informs everything that the player does during a game, and it constantly dominates the game state. It is something that must always be accounted for. In contrast to pinning, though, Battle Shock doesn't feel like it will really matter that much. While lots of the faction abilities that we've seen so far do interact with the Battle Shock rules, I'm worried that the system will otherwise feel pretty disappointingly negligible. The only real effect of Battle Shock on units is that those units cannot have stratagems used on them. They also can't contest objectives, and when they fall back, they risk losing some of the models in their unit. Okay, not bad, but I don't think that this will matter much when we consider that Battle Shocked units can lose their Battle Shock status at the beginning of your turn, at the beginning of your command phase. This means that if your units get Battle Shocked during the enemy turn, which is the most likely time for it to happen, they are likely to regroup at the beginning of your turn, at the beginning of your command phase, and then score their objectives at the end of the command phase like normal, like nothing had happened. And so I'm left shrugging my shoulders and thinking, why even bother with this? It feels like a lot could have been done here, and there's so much more design space for them to play in. Maybe in play it's better, and I look forward to trying it. I hope it really is impactful when I come to play 10th edition. But look, alright, ultimately the biggest changes to the game aren't changes to the core rules, but how the peripheral rules of how players engage with Warhammer 40k and how armies will function in the game. Those elements may be pretty transformative, but we haven't seen the index full of all the army rules and profiles yet, how the different components of each army will fit together. 9th edition was extremely masturbatory. You felt like you were trying to optimize your own army and then just shooting at your opponent and not really worrying about what they're doing. I'm hoping the 10th edition feels a lot more interactive because hopefully it's a lot simpler. I'm hopeful that the feel of the game will be different as a result. And this should be achievable if 10th edition is less about trying to optimize an army engine or synergies and instead about dynamic gameplay on the table. But from looking at the core rules, the game so far doesn't seem to be set up for that. Nevertheless, I am hopeful that 10th edition has made changes in the right direction because a lot of the inaccessibility of 9th came from the codices system, something which 10th edition is getting rid of, at least at first. Okay, it's not really getting rid of it. That was a little bit of a bait and switch from Games Workshop. I'm just thankful though that for most people, they will not have to choose between tons of different sub-factions, warlord traits, and guff. Each army now gets a short, accessible, transformative, and defining army rule that informs how they play on the table, instead of a huge book detailing paragraphs of complex Games Workshop legalese that results in a, oh, I auto-wound on a 6. Oh, that's good. Instead, we're getting flavorful and fun rules like Genestealer cultists constantly ambushing their opponents, coming back after they die, and Dark Eldar being rewarded for causing suffering. I've been really impressed by the faction rules, actually. Honestly, I think they look great. I never believed that Games Workshop could produce such legible rules before. But ultimately, 10th edition does appear to be refining the 9th edition formula, which is fine for existing fans, but if you're somebody that didn't enjoy 9th edition, or 8th edition, or really any edition of Warhammer 40k, then 10th edition isn't for you. If you're playing Star Wars Legion or Bolt Action right now and you like the fast, dynamic gameplay that those systems represent, then 10th edition isn't really for you. If you are one of the many Warhammer players who have never actually played a game of Warhammer 40k, you've just collected models, but you're worried that Warhammer is far too much like hard work, then Warhammer 40k 10th edition is still unlikely to change your mind. I'm just trying to manage hype here, especially as I continue to cover 10th edition Warhammer on the channel in a balanced way. But hey, Games Workshop did acknowledge that the game got too bloated in 9th, so, you know, hopefully whatever additional rules they come out with for each army in those codices, hopefully they, you know, restrain themselves. Hopefully. I care a lot about this. Warhammer is the flagship. It is the biggest war game product. It is an advertisement to mainstream culture. Here is what is possible when you take your miniature man and put him on the table. Like it or not, Warhammer 40k is our ambassador as wargamers. So I really wish it would stop throwing up on itself. Okay, so since I last recorded that video, there has been an update. Games Workshop have released a bunch of battle reports for Warhammer 40k 10th edition, and I gotta say, I'm feeling pretty vindicated. Almost every single point that I made in this video has pretty much held up. They've shown off a combat patrol as well as a bunch of other battle reports of the main game proper too. And the game is basically 9th edition again. The turn structure is the same, the pacing of the game is the same. If you're expecting something revolutionary and transcendent, this ain't it. But hey, you know, if you are somebody who enjoys 9th edition Warhammer 40k or just the general gameplay of 40k, then 10th edition looks like it's gonna be one of the best versions of that game. At least much better than 9th edition. In fact, if you want to hear my full opinions on Warhammer 9th edition, check out my Patreon below. I did a review of it as my bonus video for patrons. And if you want to hear my opinions on 10th edition, then subscribe to the channel because I'm going to be reviewing it in the near future. Meanwhile though, if you want to see my desperate attempt to get a 40k 10th edition demo game in and how it all went devastatingly wrong, then check out this video here. And as always, a huge thanks to my patrons, especially Sonic Bread, Crypto Kev, Novani, and Mistress RB. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you all next time. Bye-bye!